Board of Aldermen shall come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Morse. Price.
Here.
Wilson.
Present.
Here.
Neal.
Present.
Ross.
Here.
Rains.
Here.
Here.
7 present. We do have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I'm entertaining a motion to adopt the agenda to be altered, to be amended. I am entertaining a motion to adopt the agenda, moving item 6A and 6B to below the administrator's report, and to move the executive session to occur after 6A.
So moved. Second. With the exceptions.
Okay. That's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We have approved the amended agenda.
Sorry, just can I clarify, Mayor, to make sure I have making correct notes on my sheet here?
Yes, okay, please.
So after the administrator's report, we will do 6A, executive session, and then 6B?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then after, and then the executive session after 6A.
The original 6A, after Paul Long, Alice Akers.
Yes, at the original 6A. After 6A,
So it's moved up to right after 6A, right after the administrator's report.
yes, that is
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Okay. I am entertaining a motion to approve the reading of the minutes of May 13th, 2025 work session, executive session, and the May 27th, 2025 regular and executive session. I'm entertaining a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We have approved the minutes for May 13th and May 27th. Now for the financial reports. Do we have a report from the finance director?
No, it's included in the packet.
Okay. Okay. Do we need a motion of approval on that, sir?
Mr. Mayor, normally there's a motion to go ahead and approve the financial report and
Yes,
to pay
okay.
the bills.
All right. I am entertaining a motion to approve the financial report as contained in our packlet.
I move we pay our bills.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We have approved the financial reports. We'll move on to the presentations. We have a new hire, Officer Mason Painter. Is Officer Painter here? Here we are. Please step forward, sir. Shall we thank you very much for joining us, and why don't you step forward and
just so everybody knows, Officer Painter was with us, what years?
18 to 21.
And he's coming back, so we're happy to have him.
Okay, wonderful. Come back. Yes. I've already seen Officer Painter in action, and he does a wonderful job. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Right. Okay. We have a request. We have a citizen's request from Mr. Dennis Anthony to address the board. Is Mr. Anthony present? Okay, Mr. Anthony, if you would step forward. You have the floor for 5 minutes, and that is a timed 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I am Dennis Anthony. My wife, Tammy, and I. We moved here August 13th of last year. We love it here. We love it in Bolivar. We're not used to such a friendly city. And for the most part, many people here are friendly and welcoming. And that's very nice. I'll try to go quickly through this. I'm asking for the board to consider, if you would, revising the speed limit on Mesa Drive from 30 to 25. And also, actually more important than that, after having time to think about it, it would probably make a bigger impact on traffic if we actually installed a couple of slow signs. Those kind that are big square, yellow, big letter slow. We've got some speeders on our road, and we've got lots of pedestrian traffic anymore, all kinds of variety of traffic. And I'm concerned about someone hitting one of those strollers as they're moving down the road. Let's see.
Mesa, now that's out in the new section on the southwest, isn't it?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within walking distance of Freddy's,
Right.
fortunately. Oh, we appreciate so much that the city plans to fill the cracks on Mesa Drive. And I've talked with Thomas, Kyle, and Gary Sims. They're all inclined to try to do that for us this year. I really appreciate it. There is an issue, though. This is me mowing the weeds where the asphalt meets the concrete curb.
Yeah, I think we've seen that picture.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'd like to retire from doing that if possible, but the crack sealing machine that you have will not do that. The sealant is not compatible where it meets asphalt to concrete, I'm told. So possibly could we fund some weed killer for that? That could keep me back from having to mow the weeds. Something to think about. Okay. Speaking of retiring, I retired from the Navy July 1st of 2000 and then was accepted into code enforcement school and worked for the city of Kansas City from 2000 until July 1st, 2012. So I have 12 years of experience in code enforcement, and I've talked to Kyle and Gary and Thomas that, hey, I was able to get a lot of violations abated without writing a bunch of tickets, just getting voluntary compliance. So if anyone would like to hear any advice I have on that, I've offered my advice, especially I think you have a new code enforcement person.
Yeah.
So I developed some techniques of getting abatement without hauling somebody into court, and I can go into that later on. Okay, I realize we're in Southwest Missouri, and sometimes there's some of us that look at rules and ordinances and laws as suggestions more than the law. But I'm going to invite you, if you would, to take a look at the sign ordinance. In particular, the section that talks about the signs on the right-of-way. The right-of-way on our city streets actually does not stop where the pavement stops. The right-of-way, the public right-of-way extends at a minimum 12 feet on either side of the pavement, and oftentimes it can be 30 or 40 feet. Your ordinance, our ordinance, says that only government authorized signs are authorized on the public right-of-way. Well, if you take a drive down Mo 83 or Aldrich Road or others, you can see the stick signs, some of which are ready to fall into the street, the little portable folding signs. There's a whole variety of private advertising signs on the public right-of-way. And this ordinance says you don't do that. That the government has to authorize any kind of signs. So it makes sense. If we want to post a new slow sign on Mesa Drive, you don't have to ask my permission. You just pick a spot 10 feet over or whatever is appropriate, and you plant the sign. And the government does not need permission.
Could you wrap up your comments,
do that.
please, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, in particular, let me just end with this. Kyle pointed out to me that Mo 83 is really a MoDOT responsibility,
Yes.
not
Right.
the city's.
Right.
So I've reached out to MoDOT to pull signs, but I wonder if you would also consider coming up with a form letter to mail to businesses that informs them of the ordinance and says basically, please cooperate by not placing your signs on the public right
Okay,
of way.
all right. Mr. Relford, what would be a proper way for us to consider some of these? Should a staff meeting or?
I'll get with Kyle and his staff and we'll work on these.
Okay, I think your suggestions seem reasonable, but there's always a process, as you certainly well know.
Of course.
And we so much appreciate your being a part of our community and taking the time to be concerned and coming addressing us, and feel welcome to do that at any meeting.
You bet. Thank you, and thanks for considering.
Yes, it will be taken under serious consideration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Okay. All right.
Audit.
Okay. Now then, I think we have someone from, a nice young lady from KPM that will explain, if it's possible to explain, a document so complicated. And your name again, please?
I'm Rebecca Baker.
Rebecca Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Baker, please proceed.
Okay. You should all have a copy of the audit in front of you if you'd like to follow along with me. I'm with KPM CPAs out of Springfield, and we have audited the city's financial statements as of 12/31/24. So we'll start on page 3 of this report, and I'm just going to briefly go through this. I know it's June, and you guys are far past this, but it's good to kind of go over what the ending numbers were last year. So on page 3 is our independent auditor's report. We perform an audit to determine if the city's financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Then we issue an opinion based on our audit results. And the city has received an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best opinion that you can get. So congratulations on that.
Say it again, please.
Which part?
Just said.
The city has received an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best opinion that you can get.
Okay. Thank you.
So that means that we believe the amounts in these financial statements are materially correct. We certainly don't have time to look at every single transaction, but
Certainly.
we issue an opinion saying that we believe the amounts in these financial statements are materially correct.
Okay.
Okay, if you'd like to turn to page 11, I'll briefly go over the financial information. Page 11 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for the city's governmental funds. And you can see the city has 6 major funds, and then in the next to the last column, you have a column that says non-major governmental funds. So the significant funds are presented separately, and then that non-major column, there are 5 funds that make up that amount, but they're brought forward in the aggregate. So if you want to see the detail of those 5 funds, you can go to page 42 and 43 to see those at a later time, but we'll just quickly go through the major funds. So the first column is the general fund. Total revenues in the general fund were $6.5 million. This was an increase of about $890,000 from the previous year. Taxes kind of stayed flat. There wasn't really, there's actually a decrease of $4,000 in sales taxes. Intergovernmental revenues were $1.1 million. That was about $500,000 higher than the previous year. The majority of that was the ARPA money. The city spent almost all of the remaining portion of the ARPA funds, which you had to have those funds committed by December 31st. So the city spent all but $141,000, and that amount was committed actually on the park equipment. Interest income increased about 122,000, and then the other revenue increased about 208,000. Most of that was from the donations from the signs, the new signs that the city has at the exits. So total expenses in the general fund were about 5.8 million. This was an increase of 865,000 from the previous year. 500,000 of that was also due to the ARPA spending, and the remainder was in the public safety fund increase. Okay, so then if you go down, you'll see there were transfers out of about 1.5 million. Those were funds that were transferred to the fire fund and the recreation fund. And then the general fund ended with a balance of 17.9 million. I wanted to point out that about 16.5 million of that is your direct and indirect proceeds from the sale of Liberty that the city still has on hand. And the remaining portion is unassigned and can be used for other purposes. So we look at your unassigned fund balance in the general fund and compare it to what your expenses are during the year. And we determine what the city's reserve is in the general fund. And the city had about a 25% reserve at year end.
How
It's
does
about
that
3
stack
months.
up? I mean, is that lots or not much? Or?
That's adequate. We always recommend about 3 months. So that's about 3 months. And what that means is if you don't get any other revenue, you can still pay normal operating expenses for 3 months. So that's pretty common reserve. The city has to decide what they want. Now, I'm calculating that based on public safety being in the general fund. Public safety, as you know, is moving out to the public safety fund, or it already has for fiscal year 25. So that's including the public safety expenses. If those expenses go away, then the reserve's actually higher. But I'm not sure how much money you're gonna have to transfer out to the public safety fund to help replenish and help with the public safety expenses in that fund. So that's just at a point in time, that's what it was. And it's really just an estimate. And the next column is the street fund. I'll just go over the changes in the other funds. The street fund decreased about 75,000. The half-cent capital improvement fund decreased about 363,000 from the previous year. Recreation facility decreased 41,199, and you can see that general fund had to transfer in 816,000 to the recreation facility fund to make up the deficit of their expenses over revenues. Same for fire fund. The general fund had to transfer in around 750,000, but their fund balance did increase 97,000. And then the last, this is a new fund, the public safety fund started collecting sales tax in fiscal year 24. So there weren't any expenses in 2024, but the amount in that fund, 509,000, was all sales tax collected during fiscal year 24. So the fire fund in fiscal year 25 will no longer be presented on your financial statements. All of that money will be transferred over to the public safety fund. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the financial information?
And this may not be a question for you.
Okay.
When you're saying that the fire and public safety is all going to be one fund, are we still going to be tracking which of those dollars are fire fund to go to make sure the fire fund goes to the fire and public safety can go to fire or PD, but the fire fund is just going to fire, right?
Correct.
Okay, just making
Correct.
sure. When you were saying that they were going together, I just was
Oh,
want to make sure that the fire department was still getting their fire fund. So thank you.
yes. Yeah, we looked at that when we were here during the audit. I kind of looked at how finance has that set up where you'll be able to see the fire sales tax versus the public safety sales tax and how that's being allocated. Okay. Next, if you will turn to page 13. Page 13 is where the notes to the financial statements begin. They are about 15 pages long. The notes are a required part of the financial statements. We do issue our opinion on the notes, and I just wanted to point them out because they give more detailed information on the city's significant accounting policies. If you see restricted cash on the financial statements, the notes will tell you what that cash is restricted for. If you see investments on the financial statements, the notes will tell you what types of investments that the city's holding. The notes also have future debt service, et cetera. So I do encourage you to read the notes in conjunction with the financial statements. Okay, the last thing.
What kind
I'm
of
sorry.
investments are we holding?
You have some treasury bonds and CDs, treasury strips, just governments are only allowed to invest in certain things, so they're
That
not
there's a
really
restriction
risky.
on the types of vehicles or that we can invest in.
Definitely, yes, and the city is in compliance with that. I think that the bank that you work with knows that the city can only invest in less risky investments. Okay, the last thing I want to go over is if you go to the very back of the bound copy, there's a couple loose letters. Just
Should that be on?
it's just at the very end. They're not bound. They're just at the very back. And there's a number 1 about halfway down the page. Yeah, if you flip to the very back, there's just 2 letters there. So this is our management recommendation letter, and this just gives us the opportunity to let the city know if there's any new accounting pronouncements that might impact your financial statements or if we have any recommendations. So number 1 is new accounting pronouncements. There's a couple new GASB statements that will impact your financial statements. GASB Statement 102 is certain risk disclosures. If you had a large company that left town that provided a large source of revenue for you, you would have to disclose that in your financial statements. I know there's been talk of removing the sales tax on food. I don't know if that's just a rumor, but if that were to happen, that could significantly impact your sales tax. You guys, so another city told me that that was something that the state was talking about. I don't know that that would ever
Yeah,
come to fruition.
It's just talk right
Yes,
now.
definitely. But that's just an example of something that could have to be disclosed if there was going to be a financial impact. And then GASB Statement 103 is just they're changing the way your financial statements will look. The budgetary information that you have to present, et cetera, will be changing. That's not effective till December of 26. Then if you turn the page, number 2 is cybersecurity and information technology controls. This is a recommendation that we have every year because there's always cyber attacks going on everywhere, and we just want to remind you to make sure that you have insurance in place and also that you have policies in place for the city employees. If someone clicks on a link, you want to make sure that they know who to report that to, because you want to make sure that you keep your employee information and customer information secure. Number 3 is just internal controls. We just always remind the city as policies and procedures change to make sure you're looking at your processes and make sure that you have controls in place to make sure that the city's assets are protected. And then number 4.
And do you review our procedures as well as our numbers?
We do. We don't test your controls, but we do interviews and we go through those processes and give any recommendations that we think. But if things are changing throughout the year when we're not here, you just need to try to make sure you have procedures in place so that one person's not handling everything, that sort of thing.
That's when it goes afoul.
Yes, that's true. And it's pretty common in smaller governments where sometimes you don't have the ability to separate duties. You guys have enough staff, I think, that you are able to segregate duties. And the last one is just payroll liabilities. Because the city changed payroll companies, you had a new payroll provider where the accounting, where the payroll liabilities were hitting the books. Some of the accounts, they were hitting the wrong account, and we had to propose audit adjustments to fix those. So we're just recommending that the city reconcile those payroll liabilities during the year so that that information is accurate. Okay, that's all I have to go over. Does anyone have any other questions?
I don't know if any of us know enough to ask questions.
Well, if you read through that book and you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Natalie has my contact information, and you're welcome to call or email. Anybody is.
Questions and comments from the board? Well, I guess we need to just thank you for all your good work, and very nice to make your acquaintance.
Well, thank you very much. And in closing, I would like to mention that everyone that we deal with at the city, Natalie does a really good job with the accounting, and everyone we come in contact with, Paula, everyone in payroll. Kipper was new, so he got to pull a lot of invoices for us this year. Everybody's always very cooperative and professional, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, I found that to be so as well.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I entertain a motion to accept the auditor's report.
Move to accept the auditor's report.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. We have accepted the auditor's report. Now then, Mr. Testerman, our Economic Development Partnership Director, can step forward and get us up to date on his activities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Thomas and Aldermen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you today about the Economic Development Partnership. We do have a PowerPoint handy. I'm going to try to skip through some of these a little quicker. But obviously our mission since 2016, since the inception of EDP, has been to promote job growth and economic growth, create job opportunities, and workforce development, and improve economic well-being and wealth creation. And obviously that's all through jobs and bringing new business in, manufacturing industry of all types, and retail. So we're working on that. In January of 23, EDP did become a 501c3, so it is a nonprofit organization. We are proud to have as our board members Mr. Nick Sainer from Southwest Electric Co-op. He's our chairman of the board. We have Shannon Hancock, Polk County presiding commissioner and vice chairman. Leon Worth from Southwest Baptist University is our secretary. And Tracy Slagle from Liberty Utilities is our treasurer. We have Michael Methvin from Bolivar Schools, superintendent. We also have Michael Calhoun, CMH CEO, and Pat Douglas, Industrial Development with the Authority, IDA. Paul Fulbray, Bolivar Area Chamber of Commerce. Kelly Parson, Oak Star Bank. Thomas Relford, and Stephen Skopek from Tracker, White River Marine, and of course our mayor, Mike Stevens, and Micah Titterington from Community Outreach Ministry. So it's a great board. We're really proud to have them, and they're very good about keeping up with what we're doing with the economic development, which is why we're here today as well. So it's been a privilege to lead the economic development of Bolivar, Polk County over the last year. It's been 1 year, so I've been here a year out of the 9 years that we've been incorporated, I guess. And so 2025 is kind of getting into full swing now, obviously, since we're now in June. And we do have some economic opportunities that we're working through that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. So I'm going to kind of skip some of these. So what does a formal economic development program entail? Basically, we just work with businesses, people, the community itself. So we have some people that do come see us for if they have a small business and they want to grow that business, what kind of grants can they get? And we do meet with people about insurance. We've had 3 or 4 just this year come to us and say they're expanding their workforce just a little bit and see if there's any other insurance grants they can get from the state or federal. So we do help in that regard as well. And we do track economic development drivers and markers and basically act as liaison between different communities and different entities throughout Southwest Missouri, such as Springfield, Republic, and so forth. And so what does economic development look like for Bolivar and Polk County? It's basically what I just said. So we work closely with the Polk County schools and the cities and the county, private investors, obviously in the Bolivar area, Community Foundation, Industrial Development Authority, and the Chambers of Commerce throughout Southwest Missouri. And the different entities such as OREP, I'm the chair of Ozark Regional Economic Partnership out of Springfield, out of the chamber there, as well as I'm on the board of the SBDC, which works a lot throughout the community, but especially in the Springfield area. But we're looking here as well to advance real estate and bring industry in, and they play a big part of that in the land that we have here as well as the land down there, and try to get that filled with industry and different retail aspects as well. So agriculture in Polk County, I just threw this in there. Agriculture in Polk County is obviously a big deal with beef days that just passed. So agriculture with beef, and then just regular farmland and what comes with that. Obviously, hay and haylage is a big industry for us as well. But this information, even though it's from 2021, it's a little outdated. So there's been a slight dip in some of the numbers here. However, we do have some good news, which is why I included this slide with prime beef trying to get back in action. So I met with Brian Lilly, the CEO at Prime Beef, I think on 3 occasions so far. And it's slow moving. It's a little slower than what he thought to get it back up and running down in Pleasant Hope area. But he's keeping things pretty close to the vest. But we hope to have this running by fall. That would be great, at least partially, as far as the meat processing aspect is concerned there. So that's a good plus for us. And we hope that he's able to expand that over the next couple of years as well. So we don't have a start date officially. It was going to be the end of June, but that's been pushed out a little bit.
Of course, what happened the last time was the rejection by the DNR of any expanded waste facilities or waste treatment operations. Is that still? I would think that would still be an obstacle or a huge issue. What say you as far as where that stands in the reopening of it?
That is the one thing that I discussed with them right off the bat. It was my first meeting with them, and in the first 5 minutes is how that's going to be taken care of. That's one thing he's keeping close to the vest, but he said he's working on a remedy, and that's why it's taking so long. And so that's the only information I have on that.
Okay.
I'm confident, or else he wouldn't open. He knows the situation with that. He knows what it did to the community as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's aware of that, and he wants to be successful in what he's doing. So he just doesn't. He has.
And who is this gentleman?
His name is Brian Lilly. He's the CEO
Of
Prime Beef. Basically, he
Oh,
bought
yeah,
it,
yeah.
took it
Okay.
over,
Okay.
from what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
And so the next slide, we have just getting down to the nitty gritty of what EDP does. So again, we've been doing this for 9 years now, since 2016, or 8 years rather. Or yeah, 9 years I guess now, 2016. And I've been here exactly 1 year in this position. So I did take a little bit of a step back after a few months because there are some things that I really wasn't aware of. When I came on board, it's not bad. It's just the impact that it has in this community and economic development in general, and that's the fact that we don't have natural gas in Bolivar, Polk County. It's a huge deal, and it's one of the only counties, I think, in this whole area and probably throughout Missouri that just doesn't have natural gas, and that's a huge driver for industry and manufacturing, any type of manufacturing, any type of industry. So we have the IDA property that's on Highway 13. 60 acres, I believe, are left out there. We do have some businesses there, 1 or 2, over by the water tower out there on Highway 13. It's excellent location, and that's been out there. I've heard different numbers, Thomas. I'm not sure if you know how long that's been out there, but I've heard anywhere from 8 to 15 years. I don't know if it's that long, but
Yeah, more than that, I think. Does lack of access to Highway 32 pose an obstacle to the development of that parcel?
it is. So not only is manufacturing pretty much out because of the natural gas situation, my next instinct was to say, let's get some warehousing in, let's get distribution in of some kind. And that's a tough one too, because it's basically one in and out process for the trucks that would go in and out of there, and you really can't have that. That road's not going to take, that outer road's not going to take that.
Yeah.
If we don't have the access from MoDOT, or I think there's some other
Yeah.
way to
And,
do that.
and the Barham farm kind of stands in the way, I think.
Right. And so that's a tough one as well. So I've spoken with Thomas about a couple of ideas, or he's spoken with me about it. We had, when I came on board, there was a big push to say, let's get the Fullerton Fields fixed up so we can bring in more tourism, and also have more sports teams come to us, rather than the parents having to travel all over southwest Missouri and throughout Missouri, even if they're not traveling teams, every weekend to take their kids for tournaments outside of Polk
Sure.
County. And so that's one option. And I think another option would be to rezone the IDA, because it has been so long sitting there, and maybe put fields there. And the reason why I like that idea from an economic development standpoint is to be able to add retail to that, because we want people to come here, shop, maybe even stay, but we want somebody, parents to come here and eat, spend time with their kids, spend time in Bolivar. If we can attach some retail environment to those fields as well, that would be great. And that leads me to my next thing here as far as the retail aspect is concerned. So with some of the obstacles that we do have with natural gas, and there's an issue with the water capacity and sewage capacity, and I say that in Bolivar and Polk County because we do have requests for bids come in, requests for information, and we've had 7, I think, the last 6 months that I was here in 2024, and we've had 11 this year. We bid on 2, and one was a quail egg farm, which isn't going to bring a whole lot of jobs to. We didn't get it. To Bolivar and Polk County, and I forget what the other one was, but that one we didn't get either because of the water situation. We didn't have the capacity for the water, and also rail is an issue in some cases. So those are 18 bids that we didn't get over just the last year, and not sure what it was before that, but it's pretty much a similar number each year that we've gone on. But, so what I've decided, or what we've decided to do as far as economic development is look more not just at retail, not at burger joints, but I have traveled the country. I've lived in Texas and Tulsa and everywhere else. And so being in the pharmaceutical industry or whatever it was, I'm taking customers out and I'm going out to dinner in different places. It'd be nice to have a restaurant that comes here that is unique to Bolivar. And the reason why I say this is that we did the survey when we had the broadband initiative that we worked last half of last year on when I came on board, and that initiative failed in the end. I don't think the money was really available for it, despite all the work we did to get to that point. But during that survey, we did get there's a huge response from the community, which I was impressed with. And so we had hundreds of surveys that we returned to us, and the top thing that they talked about that they really wanted in Missouri, because I reached out to them and they started calling me saying, when are we going to get broadband? And then we would turn into, well, what else would you like? And they said, we want a really good steakhouse, we want industry for jobs for our kids and grandkids, and they just wanted more retail, more things to do within the community that would drive people here. And so that was almost unanimous that they wanted a really good restaurant, more good restaurants, and more places to shop here in Bolivar, and bring people in from the northern part of Polk County and up and to the north and east and west of us, because there's a huge, I think it's 130,000 people really that we service that are underserved in the northern part of the state here, between us and Columbia or something. And Springfield's pretty much got between us and Springfield covered. So we want to attract more people into Bolivar, and I think that's a huge population, and CMH is doing that with their hospitals. So what I'm looking at is I would like to travel one night every month or every other month and go to Dallas and talk to some of these big restaurants that are a little more unique. And I'll give you an example. There's a restaurant in Texas, North Texas, called Babe's Chicken Dinner House. It doesn't sound like much, but I went to the first one when it opened, and it's amazing. Nice to customers there, and it's what they do is they go into small towns outside of anywhere you can imagine in Texas that's just run down. There's nothing. This area is not run down, but they take a small town that's pretty much desolate and forgotten, and they move into the old buildings there. So I'm thinking of Fairplay, let's say, and those old brick buildings. They go into places like that, they gut it, and then they just kind of clean it out a little bit, put old tables in there, and they make the best fried chicken made to order, and steaks and things like that you've ever had. And it's been voted #1 by Southern Living in the nation for chicken. And so they've since opened a lot of restaurants in North Texas. I'm not sure that they would come here, but that would be something like that would be great for us, because it attracts people from Springfield, people would drive for hours to go eat there, literally, every day of the week, especially on the weekends. And so that's just an example, I think, of an anchor store that we could get here that would drive people to Bolivar. And that's just one, and I have several ideas like that. But that's the kind of thing that we need to bring in, because we get all these requests for information for these bids. We're just not going to win them. It's not feasible. And so
Because
of the natural gas situation,
natural gas.
and the water and the sewage and rail is another one. It's extremely tough. And there are other, we're going to get hamburger joints, but they're not really going to employ that many people. They're not going to really drive tourists to Bolivar and Polk County. And so my goal is to bring more employment opportunities here. And I think that if we have one anchor like a Babes or something like that, even if it's in Fair Play or wherever, then we have a sports complex out on IDA. I'd rather work towards something like that that's truly going to generate tourism and bring people here out of necessity because they have the tournaments here, and then they stay and eat and shop and so forth. And so another thing that's huge right now is pickleball. And so I have a daughter that lives in Overland Park, Kansas, northern Kansas City. They have chicken pickle everywhere. If we can get something like that associated with, will blend well with the tournament, with the sports fields as well, that's what we're looking at. So that's really the focus that I'm working on. I want to be able to travel a little bit. It doesn't cost that much. We take visits. I think we've had one since I've been here, but we visited Lebanon, just kind of see how they're doing because they're a similar sized town in some regard. But then again, they have natural gas, and so a lot of what they do is doesn't really fit us. So we have to look outside the box, and that's what I've been trying to do. So I'd like to be able to travel, and I haven't really brought this up to the board yet, but meet with industries that I think will actually come here and improve Bolivar and Polk County, bring more jobs. Does anybody have any questions regarding that aspect?
Question to Mr. Ross. Go ahead.
I've got a couple. So, natural gas is a big issue. Your thoughts moving the ball fields potentially over to the IDA land, rezoning the IDA land, the restaurant from Texas. What steps have you done to have any of those happen?
So I have reached out to Chicken and Pickle. I've reached out to, and I did reach out to Home Depot early on. They're not going to do it, and neither is Lowe's, because we could use that here, because all of that goes back to Springfield. And I have reached out to those restaurants, but I really need to get down and meet with them, because just talking to them on the phone isn't really going to do that much. So I am going to put in for that, and it did take me a while, Dusty, to figure out what is the best option here, because when I came on board, it was, we need the sports complex, obviously, and that's a lot of money. And we hope that maybe SBU could contribute to that somewhat and maybe use those fields as well. I don't think that's an option right now, so that took a little while to figure that out as well. But so I'd like to be able to start that. I think we just need to buckle down and say, this is what Bolivar can bring in. This is what we could do for Bolivar. And we also have the trails, and let's fix up the trails, the parks, and the lakes. And that way it would drive more tourism. I don't think people are going to come here and ride their bikes and go kayaking when we're in the Ozarks, and there's a lot of that south of us and pretty much in any direction. I don't think that's going to happen either. I think I used to work in Northwest Arkansas years ago, and 25 years ago when I started in pharmaceutical. Walmart was huge then, but they had nothing for their parks and recreation until they brought in money. They had all their distributors move to Arkansas if they wanted to do business with Walmart. So every business had their representatives there, and that's where all the money came from. And then they started building up tourism. So we need something to drive more people to Bolivar on a regular basis.
And what do you personally think that is that's going to drive more people to Bolivar on a regular basis?
I think for us, I think it's the ball fields. I think that's something we need to focus on. I think because we do have a lot of young parents here. There's a lot of kids here. And I think being a part of the tournament rotation would be huge for us.
And when you say ball fields, what kind of, like what do you?
I'd say soccer and baseball.
Okay. Like separate from the ones that we already have now, you're saying?
Separate because we would still have to redo those to make them tournament grade, and that is going to be a cost. And so that's something that I'll put forward. I do have some of that information. I don't have a plan put together yet for that, but I will get that to you on what that cost would be. Obviously, us being Economic Development Partnership, we don't have the funding to help contribute to that, but it would be a considerable amount. But if we're considering Fullerton Fields, I'd rather have something we can attach a complex to, rather than just redo, and it would almost be a similar cost.
Okay. So you see, like, the industry that's really going to kind of help Bolivar thrive and things is youth sports.
For now,
okay.
I think right now, I think that's part of it, and then attach that to retail. I think if we get one of these restaurants I'm thinking about, except for maybe that Babes, that would probably attract some people. But I think if we could attach retail to that, I think those are our two major industries that we really need to focus on. I've racked my brain to see what else we could do in Bolivar that would really bring big business or more people to Bolivar and to get them to stay here and shop. And we also want people moving here as well. Because we are in the middle of the state, I think we could sell that location aspect once we do get people coming in more often. Maybe they will stay. It would help for the hotels as well.
And natural gas, you don't see that being, I mean, I would love to have natural gas, but that's not a viable, affordable
My first
option.
week here, we had a big meeting about natural gas. We met with, it wasn't Spire, it wasn't anything like that. It was the people who supply Spire with their natural gas. And basically the option for us would be to pull it from Nevada, which is 66 miles or something like that. And you're looking at about $250 million. It's about $4 million per mile on average to get it here. That's not going to happen. And so if we wanted it to happen, it should have happened 30 years ago. However, and I don't have much information on this, there's a committee, we just had our first meeting here in Bolivar, they did. It's called LORE, Leadership for Ozark Regional Evolvement. It's another committee. But this is more inclusive of all of Southwest Missouri, but especially smaller towns like Monett, Mount Vernon, Bolivar, and some others. And so that are off of, some are off of I-44, but some are mostly away from Springfield and that hub. And so I was speaking with one of the gentlemen who's kind of started that, and he said that there's an opportunity for natural gas to bring to Bolivar and some of these more remote areas where they're not being served, even though some of the cities have it. Because they have bids now for these data centers, because AI is becoming such a huge deal, it requires massive data centers. And a lot of companies are saying this is the perfect space for it because it's in the middle of the country, it's in the middle of the state, and they want to bring it up to Bolivar, and that could be our in. They mentioned a price tag, $70 million.
And natural gas would not be an obstacle under those circumstances.
Well,
I mean, for that kind of development.
right. So that would, I don't know the total cost. He mentioned a cost of $70 million for the natural gas. Our portion of that would be a fraction, but we would work towards. It's a whole lot better than
Yeah, much better. Have you looked into, because I know Hickory County, Dallas County, and Polk County are like, there's 7 counties in Missouri that does have natural gas. Those are 3 of the 7. Have you looked into doing anything with them to see if maybe if Dallas can pull it from Lebanon, that maybe we can pull it from, work kind of together with that?
We did. We've talked. I didn't talk to all of them, but we did talk to some. And at a couple of the meetings that we went to in Springfield, and they're in the same mind. It's whether it's 30 million or 270 million or 10 million, they can't even come up with that. And it's just a tough ask. Plus, we'd all have to go to the state pretty much at the same time to get that. And if we did it piecemeal, one by one, and they went, let's say Hickory went first or whatever, that would still take years, and then we'd be years beyond that. It just doesn't make much sense to do it that way.
Thank you.
Questions and comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Neal.
So the city has supported economic development partnership for a while. When we are discussing your work with our constituents, do you have recommendations for how we can explain the return on investment that the city sees, since some of their tax dollars are going to fund your work,
Right.
so that they can understand why this is a worthwhile use of their funds? And sort of a second part to that would be how we can evaluate whether the work is being done well. I assume it's possible to do it poorly, as it's
Right.
possible to do any work poorly. And since I am not in economic development, I would also like to have, if you have suggestions for what rubric we can use to evaluate the quality of the work that's
Sure.
being done by the DP. Does that make sense? That two-part
It does.
question? Okay,
Makes
thank you.
perfect sense. So, and I'm just going to be honest with the aldermen and everybody in the room. When I came on board, I went back to look at what we've accomplished over the last 8 years as far as economic development. And there's, I think, 4 or 5 binders in my office that have the meeting notes from our board meetings that we have quarterly. And it's pretty much the same thing. We have requests for information for bids. We had 8 bids this last quarter, 3 bids this last quarter, whatever the case might be. We didn't get any of them because of the issues that I brought up earlier. And I could not find any other information outside of those binders as far as what retail do we bring in. I think there was a restaurant in town that maybe we had something to do with in the past. And so my job is to change that. And so I understand exactly what you're saying, because I was scratching my head as well, saying, well, we're not going to have natural gas. And so I had to kind of break down some of the things that we had been working on, that I was told, hey, these are things that we need to bring in, manufacturing and industry. So I believe our money is going to be well spent if we go with the plan that I just presented to you. And the way I can document that to you is just send something to Thomas or Nick, obviously. And we have something that I could send you every month that says, here are the things that Brad's doing. And we also have Rebecca Baker as well that works with me. And so we could send you an update every month. And that's something that I do on occasion to the board. So that's something I can do. Now that we've kind of narrowed down how we can bring business in, and that's one of the reasons why I'm standing before you today. If you're not satisfied with what I presented as far as what we're looking at, I want you to be honest with me and say maybe that's not enough. But those are the ideas that I have, and those are the ideas that I think can work. And I've been here a year, and I'm just trying to figure this out. I do believe these things that I brought up will work, and it's not going to take that much time. That's the other thing. I want to see results as much as you do, as much as anybody in this room, probably more so. What I've done throughout my career, I've been a professional throughout my career, and companies, when they fail, they bring me in to fix them. And that's what I tend to do. And this is probably the toughest job I've ever had, because even though we have resources for economic development, I don't have resources to go and put a retail shop somewhere. I don't have personal retail, my company doesn't have retail money to go out and bring a restaurant in. I have to go to the community. And so I don't think that's the tough part. I think it's just finding who we can get here to come here. And that is very tough to do, and I think I've narrowed that down for everybody. And I would give you an update, whether it's monthly or quarterly, however you want that done, so you can have a better idea of what we are working toward and what we're working on, and be specific about it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, and I certainly appreciate a desire to keep us informed. I also think it's helpful, right? Because you could send me the list of what you did this
Right.
week, and and like after you've done it, right? I'm not going to know. Like, I like the idea of hearing beforehand. These are the things that I
Sure.
want to see done this year. These are the things that you will know I did a good job. And I'm not saying you have to have I realize
Right.
these are things that are outside of your control, which is why I want you to tell us, because it wouldn't be fair for us to say you haven't succeeded unless you bring in an industrial
Right.
business to the IDA or get us natural gas within 12 months. That would be a ridiculous standard. But try to understand, what is the standard where we can say, this is what it looks like to do my job well, and that way we have something to hold up. So when we get those updates, we're not just holding it up to, well, it sounds like a month's worth of work, I guess, or whatever, whatever the evaluation is that
Sure.
we're doing as people who aren't in EDP,
Yeah.
to be able to know and have something to hold it up against and say, okay, well, this is what he said a successful year looks like, doing his job well, and this is what we're seeing as we get those reports, and we can see, yes, it matches, it tracks what we said we wanted to see happen and invested our dollars to accomplish, invested the citizens' dollars to accomplish. We are seeing progress toward that. Does that make sense?
Yep, and I can give you a business plan. And
Okay.
So I'm used to doing that through any company I've been with on a regular basis, and I update it, usually quarterly. So I can give you a business plan, and we can compare it to that. There's going to be obstacles, but I think that's what I've done over the last year. We've obviously worked hard toward getting businesses here and so forth, and reached out to the community quite a bit. And we did spend quite a bit of time on the broadband initiative and things like that. That was meetings and meetings every week, and that was a little bit of a disappointment. But I can get that to you, and I'll tell you how it matched up. But I think having a plan, a specific plan with who we're trying to bring in, who are we working with, who we've spoken with, and we just follow that up on a probably monthly or quarterly basis. However
Okay.
you want it, but a business plan in advance, and I can work on that pretty quickly. We pretty
I'll-
much have it.
I'm sorry, Alderman Raines?
You had mentioned something about cycling wasn't a good option.
I don't think it's a bad option. I think it's going to be expensive to fix up the trails, and the parks and the lakes and so forth. And that will be millions of dollars that we'll have to fix up. I think that's a great idea. I just think that if people are going to come here to Bolivar for that, personally, I don't see that happening. And the reason why I say that is that Becky and I went to Roosters today. And everybody in that room, I can tell you right now, they look like they aren't going to go out on a trail that afternoon or that weekend, because they're working 9-to-5 jobs, and some of them are working on the weekends, and some of them working on farms. And I just don't see the people of Bolivar. Obviously some of them do that, a lot of them do that, but to justify that expense to build that up and hope that tourism comes in, that people want to come and ride their bikes here and walk the trails and so forth. When there's so many around, I'm not saying we don't do that. I say we kind of follow the Northwest Arkansas pattern and say, let's bring in the people first, the new people or more tourism and people that will want to come here, and then they can utilize that, and then we build that up. I'm not saying we don't do it, so much later, we don't do it at all. I say we just do it a little bit later.
I will say, so Bolivar, I don't know if you know this, but it is like a central location for 5 different major trails throughout
It
the
is.
state. And so when I think about that, I think that there's a lot of potential there. When, I don't know if you know much about the cycling community, but like the Katy Trail, the businesses along the Katy Trail make millions of dollars every year just from people that ride it. That they're not people that are local, it's tourists. And with our central location, it could potentially be a really good way to bring in revenue and create tourism. And I'm not saying we're going to be a Bentonville,
Right.
because we don't have Walmart resources. But, we met with, what was the name of the company? Lane Shift.
Mm-hmm.
And they did an assessment, and they're still pulling out data about our community. And there are less costly things that we can do to make our community more friendly and safe for pedestrians and cyclists that could really help bring in that type of tourism. So it doesn't have to be new trails. It doesn't even have to be fixing up the old trails. It's just, little things that we can do to help improve the culture and create more welcoming environment for those that are interested.
All right.
Well, and it maybe the part of what you're talking about is it wouldn't necessarily be like, all right, I'm a cyclist. When do I get to do Bolivar? Like that
Right.
may not be what happens.
Right, no.
But you might be like, well, I'm on the Katy Trail and I'd like to go to whatever one of the ones is that we're on the way to. I don't know from
Yeah.
biking, but and they're like, well, Bolivar, they've made it so I can navigate. It's got a decent reputation as a through location,
Right, as a
not
through.
as a destination, but as being on the path and taking advantage of those. Like you said, we're surrounded, so people are like, oh, I was at this lake and now I'm gonna bike to this other lake, and maybe some of the way they can come here. So I don't know if you were thinking primarily in terms of like an actual magnet for
Right.
that, and then you are talking about trails and bikes and like come here to bike as opposed to come through here.
Right.
Right.
I'm
Come
thinking,
through here to
we're
bike,
Not
yeah.
We're not going to be a
Right.
central hub
Yeah.
by any means, but let's make it more friendly so that when people are cycling through here, we can actually, it will be attractive to them and be like, oh, look, this is a
Right.
great place for cyclists to come. Right now, people are like, oh, I don't want to go cycle through Bolivar.
Well, haven't we had multiple meetings with the cyclist community come to our meetings 3 or 4 times this last year to be like, hey, like,
Well, we
see
have a
progress.
very passionate, dedicated group of. I'm not a local cycler, in
Yeah.
case anybody, did not
We
realize
both,
that.
Dusty.
But we do have a lot of people who are very passionate about it, and they have come to the meetings, several times. So I think, they're trying to get stuff set up. Question I have is, your test for like the trails and things like that is other people do it around, potentially better than we do, and the cost to do it. And I'm going to preface this with, I'm a big supporter of youth sports. I think that's great, but I could make the same argument for there are people around. Max Creek has great facilities. Springfield has great facilities. Willard has, and so what helps determine that, hey, we can do what they're doing with a sports complex different, and that's going to bring more people in than if we do spend the money on like cycling or something else. If we're kind of have that test of, we don't want to do it with our parks and rec because other places are doing it better than we are in the cost, could we not apply that same thing to the sports complexes?
I'm not saying we don't do the trail. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that when I speak with the people, and a lot of these people call me regarding these surveys, their interest in Bolivar and Polk County, which I represent, they're not into that. They're into retail. They're into the sports complex.
Okay.
I think we're kind of splitting hairs here, but I think if it's the ball fields that we're talking about, we are bringing people into Bolivar. They're going to stay for a few hours. They may stay overnight. They're going to eat. We talked about retail being here. If we don't have retail for the bikers to stop and do something with, that's an issue as well. Same thing for the ball fields. But I think if we can attach, I just thought that if we could attach the ball fields to some sort of real estate development on the IDA property, which is 60 acres,
Yep.
I'm just trying to utilize what we have at the moment that we can combine to bring everything in, and then we can also, bring in
And
the,
you know,
the
like I
trails.
love the idea of the IDA land. To me, that's the most underutilized, underappreciated area we have in town. If you go to Freddy's at any given time, there's a bus when there's going to be kids in uniforms having no connection to Bolivar, but just passing through. So that land is, we actually get a lot of business off of the highway from that area. So yeah, no, I love the idea of the IDA land being something like that. It's just kind of like you said. I want to say I think it's closer to 20, maybe 25 years that it sat there, and it's literally it started with like 78 acres, and now we're down to like 60. So it's not real. Hasn't been a real go-getter. So that's I would love to see like, hey, this is our plan for the IDA land, and this is what we're going to do to get people here. So,
And it's the thing is just it's a prime location, and so that just bothers me from day one. It's like I can't believe somebody hasn't scooped this up yet.
Yeah.
So, but my whole point was we've talked about bringing in manufacturing industry when I came on board. I just don't see that happening because of the situation we have. But we're here, and I want to produce something, and I really love Bolivar and Polk County, and I want to make sure that we can do. These are the fastest things that we can do, I believe. It's not going to happen next month or even within a year, probably, but we're going to try. But we can have those steps, which I'll show you, that we're working toward. And I think those are viable options. I hope you do too, because there's not really much else aside from the day-to-day. Hey, we're getting a new burger joint, but a lot of the developers in the area, even out of Springfield, they already have those connections. They don't necessarily need me to. They don't come to me. I have to go out and search for them. Whereas the developers, they get those opportunities to them, and they're not getting many of those through the developers.
Questions and comments from the board?
Yes, when you say retail, can you give me an idea of what retail can mean a lot of things?
Retail can mean a lot of things. So initially, I'd obviously be restaurants, because that's what people wanted in this area. That's where people go. Especially if they're coming here for a reason, with trails or ballparks, whatever. They want to stay and eat. We want them to stay and eat. They want a decent place to stay. I mean, we have great restaurants here, but I think I'm sorry. What was the question?
What do you mean by retail?
So retail, the rest of retail, and then attached to that would just be shopping. I think it would be unique shopping, and I think that just comes with natural growth based on bringing the people here through the ballparks and so forth. And I'm not saying that's the only thing, but
What do you mean by unique shopping?
something that's, maybe we don't have brew pubs here. That's another big thing we don't have. I know it's probably something that Bolivar may or may not want, but breweries are a big deal. They're huge in Springfield, and I think people would want something like that, something a little bit different that we don't have. And I think just maybe an Alamo type place, if we can get to that point, and maybe more chain restaurants, and then I think that would drive Home Depot to be here as well.
But I tend to think of all of those as being not retail. Are those considered retail?
I would consider them retail.
Okay, like you would consider the brew pubs and okay. This is why I'm glad I asked, because I was definitely thinking a lot of those fall more under more kinds of restaurants. But am I right in understanding? I mean, one of the comments that you made in passing about burger joints is that they're not bringing a lot of jobs. I would assume the same would be true of most. I mean, I guess you might have more servers, but are you? My understanding with these items you're talking about, like shopping and the retail and the restaurant, is not on a job creation side of things. It's on the tourism, bringing people inside of things. It wouldn't be big drivers of employment.
That's why we have to be selecting the kind of restaurants that we're bringing in.
Okay.
That's why I was so specific about certain types of restaurants. They do hire more people.
Okay.
Quite a few more people. I mean, if you look at, I know a lot of people in the community may not have wanted it, but if you look at Floor Farms, for instance, they hire 200 people. 50% of them come from just the Bolivar city alone. And that's something that's unique. It's a little different. And I guess you can consider that retail. I'm not sure, but I started my career before I got into pharma. I opened up the first Sonic Drive-In in Branson, Missouri, and I opened up the first one in Marionville, Missouri at the same time. And that was the #1 store in the nation, and we always called it retail. And so that's because we sold something. We sold goods. And but that opened up the west end of Branson there considerably. And that was just one store, and then people built up around us. And that was a huge deal. And so that was that brought in more, took it from the other end, the east end, I guess, to the west end. People were starting to come through the west end and do Branson West and spend a lot more money and more businesses popped up because we had put our Sonic right there at the end of that road.
Right.
The strip.
I guess one of the things that we'd heard previously from EDP that is part of what I hear in my ears is that many of the jobs that you see come in, like the jobs you're trying to use to generate growth in your community, concentrating on some of the jobs that might be lower wage jobs. Like, so I tend to think, and maybe I don't understand all of what the different kinds of jobs are, but a lot of the examples that when I'm thinking about the people who are working at some of these places that you've mentioned, those sound to me like more entry level or lower wage jobs. Do you think that when we're thinking in terms of job creation, retail and restaurants are our best way to job creation, or is it just a separate bucket where one is, you're just saying this is our angle on tourism and visitors, and job creation and like living wage jobs is just a different animal? Does that make sense?
I think it's all one bucket, and the reason why I say that is because I meet with Michael Methvin and I meet with Michael Calhoun at CMH and Superintendent of Schools here in Bolivar, and they have, and SBU as well, Leon at SBU and Dr. Nelson, and the reason why they spoke to me about it is that they are great at recruiting people, and great at recruiting professors, and Michael Calhoun is great at recruiting physicians and nurses and techs. We don't have enough places for them. There's no draw here for restaurants. There's no draw here for housing, because they want bigger houses, but they want to come here. And Michael Calhoun, for instance, does a tremendous job of getting some of the top doctors to come here. But at the end of the day, they initially don't have any place to live, even to rent. And then they can't build a big home because they're not here in the first place. And so we want to make sure that those doctors, because they go to Springfield because they have all the amenities. I think the more amenities we have and build that up, the better off our school district's going to be, the better off CMH is going to be at recruiting people, and the better off SBU is going to be at recruiting people. And I think that's a huge thing. And then I'll finish that part of it with one of the first things I did do when I got here was I met with Cronkite Homes. I think it was about a month into my tenure here, and just spoke with them briefly. And I asked them how fast they're expanding, and they said, "Well, we're kind of taking a breather right now," and so forth. I built a home in Joplin, Missouri, by Schuber Mitchell. They had a horrible reputation 10 years ago as builders, and then they completely turned it around. They're awesome. We built a home 4 years ago. We love it. It's a great home, and they're everywhere in Southwest Missouri. That part, Carl Junction. And now they're in Northwest Arkansas. So I met with my contractor, and he got me a meeting with Schuber Mitchell. Had 2 meetings with them, talked to him about coming to Bolivar, maybe building more homes, told him the situation. I just explained to the group here about having professional housing and intermediate housing. And I didn't talk to them after that. I just followed up with them, I think, 2 weeks later, and they said, "Well, we've looked at it, we're looking at it." So on, that was the last I heard. And then they bought out Cronkite Homes, and they've been expanding out there ever since. That was about 6 weeks later, I think. And so that is going to help as well. So I'm trying to work at all levels to say, look, we could bring people here, but we don't have the housing. So there's always a catch-22 to everything. I want to make sure that we wrap all that up in one big package, and I can put that in the business plan for you, and probably explain it a little better.
Okay.
Questions and comments from the board? Seeing none, we thank you so much for your work, and it's a monumental task, and we wish you the best of success because it's our success.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Counselor, do we need an approval of that report?
No, sir.
Okay.
Very good. Mr. Relford?
Yeah, I'm going to defer my administrative report until the next meeting, just due to the nature of our
Okay,
agenda,
very
how much
good.
business we have.
According to the motion that we made earlier to amend the agenda, we will move now to item 6A. Mr. Long, would you step forward and give us the really, really good, wonderful, welcome, and pleasant news?
Yes. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Mayor. No, so I don't know what all do you guys have in front of you? Do you have the 3 pieces that we discussed? So what I'd like to do is start with this premium summary page looks like this. Let's visit about that, and then I want to look at some of these spreadsheets. But so we have the renewal in front of us for the property and casualty. We knew back in December, we came out and met with Thomas and the staff to bring the news of the NCCI experience mod that was going to increase. Currently, the NCCI experience mod, it was at 1.76, and we knew that it was going to increase to 2.4. They don't bring them out that early, but if you remember, that's one of the things that our agency does is we actually calculate those with the figures so that we know in advance that this is coming. So this was an issue that we knew was happening because we had several good years, and then we knew the last good year was 2020, where we had $9,000 in work comp claims, and which rolled on to this year. That the year that it replaced that is at 300,000 in work comp claims, and so it's a 3-year rolling is what happens with an NCCI experience mod. And so when this mod takes place, we'll have a 300,000 year, a 300,000 year, and then we're ending 24-25, which is in a few days, at 275,000 in claims. And this is just on workers' compensation. So we knew this was coming. We have been working with Travelers, who is currently the carrier for the workers' compensation, the general liability, the professional coverages, and the auto. So again, we knew this was coming, and they have worked well with us in the fact that although your experience mod went from 1.73 to 2.49, they only accounted for half of that, meaning that they did not give you that full number, because in the state of Missouri, they're allowed to credit your policy to a certain amount.
Now, is that that multiplier that we talked about at the meeting the other day?
NCCI experience mod. So remember,
and that is kind of it's a number that is kind of a scorecard.
It is.
And
so
for those we're in a part of the conversation, the best or the usual or the ordinary, their average would be.
Well, it starts at either a 1.0, which would be no effect premium wise,
yes,
or it's a debit, which is what you're at now. It goes up, or it can be as low as a credit. So for cities, a 0.72 is the best that you could do, which means if we could get to a 0.72, whatever insurance company we go to has to credit you that amount on your policy.
But our multiplier
is it was 1.76
and is now
2.49. But Travelers didn't make you take all of that this year, so they've alleviated some of that blow for this year. And I didn't mean to start at the work comp, but really, if you look at the whole, at everything, that's really the big driver. It's about a 54% increase, and there's also a 25% increase in payroll, which we kind of questioned at the meeting the other day. But Carol and her team have gone back over everything, and they've confirmed that we did have a 25% payroll increase, which, as you know, is what drives the work comp premium. Yes, Dusty.
So question I have.
Yes, sir.
I don't know. I think Thomas may have. I asked him, and he may have run it by you.
Yeah.
Why can't we self-insure on workers' comp? And the reason why I ask is it looks like we paid out $875,000 over 3 years in workers' comp claims, but our premium is now going to be right under $500,000. So if it would have been the same time, we would have paid $1.5 million for $875,000 worth of claims. Would it not be in our best interest to do that and just pay out $875,000 and save $625,000?
The problem is there's still a cost of insurance that has to do, and there's a funding mechanism that has to happen. So currently, right now, you have $972,000 in open claims
Okay.
that are still open, meaning that they could still go higher than that. So just because your premium is $500,000 a year, your actual coverage on your workers' compensation, you have a million plus a 3 million umbrella on top of that. So you actually have 4 million in total coverage, which, as you know, with some workers' comp claims, could go there. You have a work comp claim that's at 300,000 for one claim right now. So
Now, question: How many years has that claim been going on?
that one's been going on for about 2 years.
So realistically, with this, that you break it down to 150,000 a year. Well, our premium is 500,000, so that still means we could have another 350,000 worth claims, and we're still coming out.
So let me explain self-insurance. It's not that you just say we're going to take it on and we're just going to put that 500,000 in a pot, and that's what we're going to have to spend. And if it goes over that, we'll figure it out. In order to self-insure in the state of Missouri, you still have to have reinsurance. Okay, so we still have to go out and we find a third-party administrator that will handle the claim. So right now, when you have a claim, Travelers or any of the other companies, they take care of all the claim filings, they deal with the people, they get the discounts from the hospitals, all of those kinds of things. And so in order to do that, you have to bring in a third party administrator. And so you're at least going to have a self-insured retention in the first few years. Okay.
So somebody who does, any idea what that costs?
That's the thing. Because of the amount of claims that you have, that cost of insurance is going to be, or that cost of settling is going to be much higher. And so right now isn't the best time to look at something like that. It's actually better to wait and see if we can get some of these claims down, if that's really what you want to look at, because you're going to pay more in claims and funding, because you have to double fund in the first year as well than you will actually on what you're paying in premiums right now. So we really need to get this experience mod back down if we want to look at that. Now, there are some captives that are looking into public entities, but currently right now, public entities are not allowed to do captive funding, which has basically become your own insurance company. Which we do a lot of that, but it's only for private business currently. But what we could do, and what we actually looked at with Missouri Employers Mutual, is a deductible program, but they weren't willing to give you that because of the amount of your claims. I did get a quote, and it's on here. We did get them to take a look at it, and they quoted it at the same payroll at $578,000. So I think Travelers is still the best place that we can go. But the next step that we would like to could get to, as far as the work comp is concerned, is getting into a higher deductible or a higher self-insured retention.
Did our old workers' comp insurance, did they give us a quote? Was it ECM?
EMC. Remember,
yeah.
they canceled you for claims, and they were not interested.
Now, did they cancel workers' comp or the
They
whole
canceled
thing?
the whole thing.
Because I thought that was more towards, we had all the hail damage from the.
It was, but they don't do standalone work comp.
They
Right.
wouldn't just do okay.
And there's very few companies that will. We had to make a deal with Travelers 2 years ago to not do the property and allow us to get the property coverage from somewhere else because of what their property numbers were, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But MEM is the main standalone work comp carrier for cities in the state. Missouri Rural Service Trust is out there, and we had you with them probably 10 years ago, but their rating structure is higher. And they're a trust, and so they most likely, because of your claim situation, wouldn't have taken it anyway. But I already knew their rate structure was higher, so we didn't even look at them right now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just to update the board on the conversations that we had, that I think workman's comp claims have a history, or maybe a reputation, or maybe being overused or abused, but it turns out that each one of the claims that have driven this they've come from the two public safety departments, the police and the fire, and each one of those incidents were legitimate. I mean, they were officers who were in life-saving activities that were injured and required extensive help. So, and we talked about the other day in the conversation that we had about working within the departments to improve safety, and I think that those efforts are underway. They're always underway, but the accidents have been legitimate. I mean, they've been officers who have been in emergent situations that have saved lives and prevented damage, and have been injured in the process. It was just it's a liability, it's a vulnerability that cities have because of the service they provide.
And like me, I'm not saying that claims weren't legit. I'm saying that
I didn't mean that
with
either.
the premiums going up, I feel like we're going to be paying in more in premiums than we paid out in claims, which to me,
you haven't. I mean, you haven't. If remember, I don't know if you remember when I came last year. If you look at the overall premium that the city has paid on
in the past, no, I'm saying moving forward.
Yeah,
because if we paid out $875,000 in workers' comp claims over the last 3 years, and now our premiums for 3 years are going to be $493,000. I'm not a cyclist. I'm also not a mathematician, but I think that's over $1 million for just our premiums. So we would actually be paying $400,000 more in premiums than we would if we just paid out those. Now, I don't know what all entails with the self. We've got to hire somebody to do this and do that. So there's added cost to that.
When you're self-insuring, you're basically creating your own little insurance company. So there's still a cost.
Yeah, and because my biggest fear is you said. 5 years ago we had $9,000 in workers' comp claim. If we have $9,000 in workers' comp claims next year and we pay $493,000 for that, I look at that as that's probably not the best use of taxpayer funds. But if we pay $2 million in workers' comp claim, I'd argue the other way. And it's one of those you just don't know.
Right.
Like me personally, I would like to maybe explore the self-insured a little bit more than just, hey, there's a lot of stuff involved in, and I'm sure there is, and it may not be cost effective, but I just, I've got that $9,000 number stuck in my head next year that if, gosh, what if we're lucky and we don't have any workers' comp claims, knock on everything that's wooden, and we've spent $500,000 just so we could have it that we don't need it. That's all I'm concerned about. And if we were self-employed, we wouldn't have to pay it, or self-insured. I keep saying self-employed, but we wouldn't have to pay that. So that's just my thought. I would really like to look in just on this one part of it, because
and so we will. But just remember, you saying you wouldn't have to pay that, you would be at more risk. The city's funds would be at more risk with self-insurance than you would with this. This is standard insurance. This is like if you had a car wreck and it was $1 million and you didn't have car insurance, you're on the hook for that. And
sure,
so,
but if I'm paying $500,000 for it and I don't have a car wreck for 3 years,
right.
I'd be better off just paying.
But that's the spread of the risk.
Yeah,
and that's what insurance is.
And that's what I'm saying.
And I'm not trying to argue.
No, and neither am I. I would like to explore that and see what the actual number is, to see if, and heaven forbid, I'm praying that we don't have a big workers' comp here, whether we go with this or something else, that's just my thought.
So that actually goes along with what I was going to talk about next. And again, I didn't want to, there's more to this than work comp, but I knew that's the elephant in the room. So what we have done up until this point, I don't know if you remember, but we put a plan together every year that we come out and do training and meet. Actually, we're meeting on a quarterly basis with Carol and the other team as far as talking about the claims. But Travelers, who does do self-insured retentions that you're talking about, has asked to let's take it to another level. And so starting next month, we're going to have a new claims review, and we're going to put a different plan in place with some stepped up provisions with some people within each department to help show the insurance companies what we can do. Now, when we can put some of those things together, that's what helps us be able to go out and look and see if there's going to be a self-insured option or something along those lines. But normally, self-insured work comp, it usually starts in the 750,000 range is what you're paying in premiums, and I know you're creeping up to that, but we will go look into that. Okay, I promise. And so if you want to be a part of any of those meetings that we're talking about the claims review and some of the things that we're going to do, I can definitely invite you to that too.
Paul, can I ask
Go
a
ahead.
question?
Go ahead.
I know we've talked about and I'm not involved in the meeting, so I may be mischaracterizing this, but the sort of checking in and doing these meetings as a way to demonstrate to the insurance companies that we are committed to bringing our risk levels down.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, the last time I remember talking about this, it was specifically with regard to property damage. It made a lot of sense to me that we could, with education and policy changes and things, we could potentially reduce some of that. Not hail, obviously, but other things where, like, damage to vehicles and things like
Right.
that. And anything that brings the insurance rates down, I'm excited about. Whatever the meeting is that causes lower insurance rates, have the meeting. But, when we're talking about workers' comp resulting from injury to public safety employees, I'm wondering what the meeting is that stops that from happening. And how that drives a reduction, how that would work for the insurance company. They're like, oh, well, they had 200 public safety individuals, but, they're having meetings, so we reduce their rates for next year. Does that make sense? I'm trying to
Yes.
understand how that's that from the insurance company's perspective
Yeah.
makes us less of a liability to them.
So we've had some of these talks before, but I think there needs to be a heavier effort in the
Okay.
future of these things. And we're going to look at either deductible, self-retention program, or self-insurance, one of those things, within the next year, if we can put these things together, and that is to have a heavier focus on return to work plans. So return to work is where you bring somebody in, and even though they can't do their current job, finding something for them. But we've also found success with other companies within the last few years of even allowing those people to go work for a nonprofit. So let's say you didn't have something for an injured fireman or an injured policeman to do, but COM had some work. You could still bring them back and then reduce that work comp claim, because you're now able to pay them to return to work in some fashion. And so that's one of the things that we want to put a heavier focus on. We want to make sure and that supervisors are helping to track some of those work comp claims, understanding that these things are happening to their person, and that there's a possibility that they could be coming back earlier. We do that. We look at the claims constantly and try and see if things can be closed. Carol does a great job of keeping us, in the loop of where people are at on their care. But there are things that can be done. Just there has to be some more awareness and doing some of these things. Like I did some meetings this week. I've been to some other public entities and talking to them about how if they can focus on safety and if they can focus on doing things properly, that helps us keep the insurance premiums down. And so maybe doing more of that. I know we have a good safety committee, and so maybe stepping that up and maybe looking at some rewards programs and some other things. But these are some things that we presented the other day Travelers we're having a meeting with them in July, and their loss prevention person is also going to be a part of that, and we're gonna put together a new plan for the next year.
And when you say that, you're not saying that people were not being safe and that's why they were injured. You're saying that regardless of whether this was a preventable situation or not, from the insurance company's perspective, have that meeting, review those
Right.
policies, have everybody be up to date on all of the best practices, all of that.
Right.
That sweetens the pot for the insurance company, regardless of whether you were already being all of the safe before. That being able to show that you're doing that and keeping that fresh in everyone's mind
That
is
is
helpful.
correct.
Okay.
That makes a difference.
Okay.
No matter what you're working on, whether it's the auto or the liability or employment practices issues or anything like that, whenever you can put something in place and show that you've got a process to try and make it better, it will make an effect on, and what we have done is the reason why Travelers went ahead and didn't make you take the whole thing, because a lot of those, like we said, a lot of those claims were in the line of duty and things that were out of your control.
Right.
So if we hadn't have done the things that we've done to this date, they could have said, we're going to give you the whole increase from 1.76 to 2.49.
You know, and we also talked about the problem of the return to work being influenced by the type of therapy or therapist or the physicians that some will a lot of the return to work orders will dictate what you can do, and those are sometimes a little arbitrary or appear to be arbitrary.
Well, and I don't know if any of you remember, but we talked about this last year. We did try and work. We went to CMH trying to get them to put a work-related only clinic in, and because of the size of the city, employees, SBU, Bolivar schools, and the county, if they had a specialty clinic that people could send their workers to, I'm not saying anything against regular doctors, but when you go to a specialized clinic that just works with people from work-related injuries, they understand what their need is to get back to work, and they help control that claim a lot better. And like I said, we have all those. We have those in Springfield. We don't have those in Bolivar. And again, that might be something that could be broached again with CMH, but that could help a lot too.
Would that be in addition to their other care?
Yeah, so they usually have a separate, like you would, maybe they could make it a division out at the urgent care for just work-related injuries.
I meant for the individual. I'm thinking if I get injured on really unlikely to get injured on this particular job, but if I get injured on the job and I injure, like, whatever it is that's injured, I want a doctor who specializes in my injury, not in getting me back to work. So I want our premiums to be lower. I want us to pay less. I don't want to hear what you're not saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like there's a part of me that's like, I don't want the doctor who's really good at getting me back to work and not really good at fixing a broken hand or whatever the thing is that I've got. Does that make sense?
It's the triage portion of it, right?
Okay.
It's the claims management of it. So like these knees, like we've got 4 knees, 3 shoulders, 2 wrists. Those were sent on to a specialist, but there's a lot of smaller things that happen that linger that a regular doctor might not put the emphasis on getting someone back over a doctor that has an understanding of work-related injuries and time back and what they can do within their position. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes some sense. It seems
Okay.
like there would be a wide enough variety of ways you could be injured at work that would be a lot of specialty to put on one person. But I guess if you're saying you refer them out to someone else.
Again, that person that they go to that part of the urgent care, they understand work-related injuries. They can sometimes get these things escalated quicker than a normal emergency room care or a normal urgent care visit because they're looking at a work-related type situation.
Right. And certainly the urgency makes a lot of sense to say, like, is this something that's obnoxious in my personal life and I don't like it, or this is keeping me from being able to do my job? I would like to get this addressed as soon as
Yes.
possible. That certainly, that part of it makes sense. I just wanted to clarify. Were you going to say something?
Go ahead, sir.
Sure.
Go ahead,
Okay.
sir.
I thought you were.
Yeah,
Anybody
go
else?
Were you not?
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, did you had a question on your face?
Well, thank
even if
you.
you didn't say something.
Thank you for that. Does Travelers, you mentioned CMH having their own special clinic just for this. Does Travelers say this is where you will go, or is that based on?
They
What?
don't direct care currently.
Okay.
I mean, they allow you to, and CMH doesn't have that clinic. So I'm just saying it helps, and the insurance companies like that more because it usually costs them
Sure.
less if there's a specialized doctor.
So, and maybe this is just with my company that I'm with. You know, when I was on work comp, they said you will go here, and this is the provider you will see, and so that's why I'm kind of hung up on.
That's called self-directed care.
Sure.
And MEM does that, which is one of the ones that we looked at. Travelers, they can't really because we don't have a facility here in Bolivar that makes them do that. Now, what they can do is they can help influence the final stuff, like if it gets into a larger surgery and some of those kinds of things.
Go
Again,
ahead.
there's more on here, but I wanted to start with the work comp because I knew that was where the majority of the questions are.
I do have a quick question
Yes.
about the
Yeah,
work comp.
Ms.
What is our
Price, go
current
ahead.
deductible? What is our current deductible?
There is not a deductible on work comp. We don't currently have one. That was what I was saying a minute ago. They just started looking into that. Travelers did not give an option for that, and neither did MEM because of the claim
And
status.
Travelers now offers a deductible?
They
To
do
lower our
offer
rate?
deductibles on some of their workers' compensation plans, but
Ours?
no, that's what I'm saying is that they did not offer that this year, and neither did MEM.
This or no?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let's kind of and so Dusty, I'm glad that you had the conversation you did about self-insurance and trying to take more risk and some of those things. And so again, we knew with the other thing that we do when we come out at the first of the year is talk about the insurance marketplace and what they're doing. I bet everybody, if one of you here didn't have an increase in your homeowner's insurance policy this year, I can't believe it, because that's what's happening. It's even trickled down to that situation. So we always know that things are going to increase. Now, we knew that the building values were going to have to increase again this year. I mean, they had made us do, we do a study each year. We do what's called an E2 value. We pay for that to make sure that the buildings are insured to value. And so we knew that there was an increase in value coming. So what we did is we did go out to market on the property. If you remember, when we moved from EMC to Travelers offered a property quote, and it had some very high deductibles in it, as much as $500,000 on the Quantic Center alone. And so we were able to get it with MoPerm at a lower flattened deductible. So what we did this year, knowing that there was going to be some increases in property, we did go out to market. We did not. Travelers said that their deductible strategy would not have changed any from their prior quote, so they declined to quote the property. But we did get a quote from Chubb, and we have been putting a lot of just standalone property with Chubb Insurance Company. And if you haven't heard of them, they're a large property insurer across the nation. So if you would go to this sheet right here, is the one I'm talking about. So we have the current renewal that's been offered with MoPerm. It's based on a percentage rate of property. They're basically at a 41-cent rate, and they're requiring to insure to value at $52,900 and $90,566. And that is on a per building co-insurance schedule. So what that means is that we have to insure each building with them to value within 90% of value. and then they have a $25,000 deductible on everything but wind and hail, and then they have a $25,000 per occurrence deductible on all wind and hail. And then they have their premium that you see there. So with Chubb, they have come in. They have what's called, they are offering blanket coverage, which is what we used to have with EMC. And so what blanket coverage means is that it's figured off of the total amount. So, for instance, their property total that they would insure at would be $49,695,196, but that's a total amount. That's a blanketed amount versus a per building amount. So that's a better policy, meaning that if on one policy we had this building insured for $2.5 million and it actually cost $4 million to replace it, we could be in a co-insurance penalty. So that's why we have to keep increasing. But with a blanket policy, we can draw from the total limit. You just have to make sure that if you have a total loss, meaning every building, that you have enough in total value in case that happens. So they brought us an option. It has a standard $25,000 deductible, and then it has a standard $25,000 per occurrence deductible on all buildings except the airport, the aquatic center, and the YMCA building at $250,000 each. So what that means is that there would be a minimum out of pocket before they would kick in. So you'd have to have up to $250,000 in losses before that policy would kick in. And then on the basically on the 2051 maintenance building out there would be $100,000, and then on the Justice Center back here would be $100,000. So these would be separate wind and hail deductibles. So if one storm came through, you would have a one-time $25,000 deductible on all structures except for these four. Now, why
are these four? We talked about this the other day. We'll refresh that if you would.
They're the larger valued buildings, so they have the larger roof values. So they're more apt to have a larger claim. So they're trying to insulate themselves from a larger loss. So the question you had was, well, if they do this, does that mean that they're gonna jump our rates and take this away next year? No, that's why they're doing this. And so this is one of the advantages of taking some extra risk, is now the insurance company feels like you've got some more skin in the game. So they're one, willing to give you a lower rate this year, but two, in most cases that your renewals are not as heavy because you're already taking some risk. So I'm bringing that option to you this year. And so if you look at the numbers, basically it would save about $87,000 in premium to go to the Chubb plan with the higher deductibles on those four buildings versus staying with the fully insured plan with MOPERM. They would also have to take on the inland marine portion as well, so that's down there as well. And the reason why that inland marine number looks a little bigger is because they put all non-building type structures on their inland marine. So everything's covered the same way, it's just they cover it a little bit differently. Gives you more coverage. So again, that's one of the choices that are out there. And then we also did get an option on the auto just to see if that would help any. And so basically, Traveler, you're on a $5,000 deductible on the autos right now. If you were to take a $10,000, if you're going to take a $10,000 deductible, they'd drop that about $9,300 in premium overall. So there's some savings there. You do have a fair amount of auto claims, so that savings could be eaten up a little quicker than the other. But does everybody understand those two options that I've got? Is there questions around that?
What is your recommendation?
Well, what we have talked about for a few years is how can we, these premiums keep increasing, and how can we maybe take some risk and take some savings? And that's exactly what Dusty was getting at on the workers' comp as far as trying to self-insure. So, this is a strategy that could help, and this is something that we could look at on an annual basis, as far as we could look at even, so if we get through 1 year, we could look at even increasing those deductibles again the next year with another larger savings. And if you look at it from an aspect of putting those funds aside, knowing that you could still be out that, then each year that fund grows. There's several other commercial businesses and cities that do that. They have what's called a claims fund, and so this would be the start of the year. So we would know that you're saving, if we did this, you'd be saving $87,000. And then maybe you put that set aside somewhere in another account. And then each year you start setting that aside. And I'll tell you, there's some cities that have been doing it for 10 or 15 years that have some enormous amounts in their savings fund. And so as your savings gets bigger, the more risk we can take. And you can even use those funds maybe down the road for some of the risk within a self-insured situation if we self-insured, any of the parts of the city. But that's where my recommendation would be, just because the fact that the premiums have already increased as much as they have, and if the city feels confident with their reserves, understanding what the loss could be on those buildings, it should be something to look at.
Mr. Relford, do you have an opinion that you would like, because we've discussed this at length, and you are very familiar with the details and the options.
Yeah, I agree with Paul as far as maybe taking that calculated risk and putting that money aside and keep on building that for give us greater chances of doing some more self-insurance.
That's kind of the way we came away from the meeting, feeling that that's probably the way well, it's up to the board, but I mean,
right.
We're struggling to find some savings somewhere in
my
all this.
recommendation would be to take the Chubb option, but I don't know that the $10,000 is worth on the auto policy because that you're saving $10,000, but now you've got a $10,000 deductible on every auto, and with some of the claims that we've had over the last couple years and
It's
the
not going
totals,
to take long to eat that savings
it's
up.
going to eat that one up pretty quick.
Well, I can tell you this year we've only had one claim, and it wouldn't have met either deductible 5 or 10,000. In 24, we would have had we'd had more. We had $65,000 worth of claims. Half of that was one incident.
Right.
And looking at the numbers, we would have had 1, 2, 3 incidents three accidents where we would have actually met the deductible. Some of them we get, believe it or not, several deer strikes in the city with our police officers, and typically those fall under that $5,000 mark. So we pay out of pocket anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's a calculated risk.
It's an additional $10,000, which would put you, about 97, almost 100,000 in premium savings if you took those two options.
Questions and comments from the board? Have you exhausted the good news, Mr. Long?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, I've explained some things, and I'm willing to keep looking into some items. The work comp, with the increasing mod, it just makes it difficult. And because you're a public entity, there's not as many programs available to you as there is a private business. And so that's the other thing. There's only a handful of companies out there that even do this, versus if you had a pharmacy or a real estate agency or whatever, there might be 30 or 40 that we could go to.
Do you know if if there's any other cities that are self-employed for workers' comp in the state of Missouri.
Insured?
Oh, self-insured.
I need to stop being self-employed.
Yeah, and think about the larger cities. There's a lot of them that can handle that type of situation. I don't know of any of our size that are, but I am willing to. Again, I'm willing to look into it. I was trying to work into it with the self-insured retention or the deductible program, which I could not get an offer on this year. And that's probably the best place to start.
Mr. Relford, are we to make a final decision on this tonight?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
it's
renewal
It's a
is effective
7/1
July
renewal.
1st.
Well, I think that is upon us. So shall I entertain a motion? How should this motion be worded?
I think it depends on what someone's moving for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we?
No, I was thinking of a motion.
Okay. Counselor, how should we craft this motion?
Well, we just need to, at least one alderman will need to have a recommendation as to which coverages to choose, and then make a motion to go with those certain coverages, and then that will go for a second and then a vote.
Or is it proper for me to entertain a motion to accept Mr. Long's recommendation to have Chubb, or would
I think we have to.
I think
make
that
the
would be up to
motion.
the alderman to decide.
Yeah.
Yeah, the aldermen make the motion.
I'll make a motion.
go ahead, Mr. Sager, sir?
I'll make the motion that we go with Chubb Insurance for the
Property.
property and travelers at the 5,000 deductible.
So keep the deductible at 5,000. Okay.
Further discussion, or have we discussed this amongst us?
Can
Do we
I?
have? Go ahead, please. Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Could we look into exploring the option of self-insured?
Right.
not self-
You had a
like what the cost would be to have, somebody kind of, like you had mentioned that position, just kind of see what that would look like.
Yeah,
Is that practical for right now, or
No, it can't be
Yeah.
done before 7/1, but
Yeah.
but we can definitely start that study, and I can get a better idea for you of cities your size in the state that have self-insurance that I don't believe there is.
Okay. So we have had. So we've had the motion, and have we had the discussion? Do we have a second?
Do we have an actual number that we're voting on?
Yeah, so basically, if you did the Chubb option with the 5,000 deductible, it'd be $922.62. It'd be on this page here.
Or 626.
I'm sorry, 626.
Is that right?
922.626 would be the Chubb option with the 5,000 deductible.
Just under $200,000 more than last year. Is that right?
Yeah. But as you can see, the majority of it is in the.
Right. No, I had nine. I know.
Yeah. Mr. Ballard, are you considering a question or?
No, I was just trying to make sure what exactly we're voting on.
Okay. You want to look it over for a moment, for a little bit, before we move ahead?
No, I think he answered my question.
Someone else? Are we as comfortable as we're going to be with a situation like this? Then I'll call for a second.
I'll second.
Council, does that require a voice?
It does not require a roll call, Mr. Mayor, but if you're more comfortable calling for one, you certainly may.
Well, does everyone want to go on record?
We're gonna be on record anyway.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Sagasser,
Aye.
Rains,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
Ross.
Again, I just have the issue with the workers' comp, so I'm going to vote nay.
Ballard.
Aye.
Sorry.
Aye. Sorry, I wasn't hearing you,
Okay. We have
although I have reservations.
ayes and 1 nay. The motion carries that we will reluctantly and painfully accept the Chubb and the Travelers, was it, recommendation that was offered to us by Mr. Long.
Okay. And I tell you what, I mean, I know you have to make the decision now because we got to get it renewed. And what drew us down to the end was the Chubb deal. That's what I was waiting on. I had the work comp stuff, but what I promise I will do is I'm willing to come back here within at least 2 to 3 months and give you my findings. How
I
about
would
that?
really appreciate that.
How
yeah.
about I come back and I'll give you, and I'll do some benchmarking with some other cities that have done that, maybe even across the country. I can put some of that information together and start maybe making you feel a little bit more comfortable about where we're at right
Well, I don't know
now.
if that's. I don't know if I'm.
Well,
feel
right,
comfortable
if
with
you're
it.
ever going to be comfortable, but let me get you some more
Yeah, no,
background
I would
on
really
that.
appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
I will do that.
Paul, before you go, one question.
Yes.
So if we did go the self-insured route, eventually at some point down the road, could that impact our ability to be eligible to get coverage from, like, say, needing to go through Travelers or MEM again? That could be an issue.
That is correct. So once you leave the standard market, and especially if you leave in duress, which you probably would be, it will be harder to come back in. Now, in the state of Missouri, we have the state of Missouri workers' compensation pool. But what the problem with the workers' compensation pool is, and I've got some cities that are there because they're actually in worse shape than you. That 2.49 that's being charged, they also charge $1.25 on top of that. It's called an ARAP factor. So it could be even worse if we had to go to the actual state pool. And but there's always an option in Missouri. That's why they created the state pool. It's just not very attractive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your work.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Okay, in accordance with the amended agenda, I'll have to, I'm entertaining a motion for us to now go into executive session, which for our visitors, we ordinarily would have done this at the end of the session, but there are circumstances that,
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we need to do that sovereign immunity.
I beg your pardon, sir?
Remember we talked about that sovereign
Oh, yeah.
immunity?
Sorry.
Oh, goodness.
I'll make another motion before I make another motion
yes,
here in
here
a
we are.
minute. I move that we approve a sovereign immunity preservation rider for the upcoming July 2025 to June 2026 insurance renewal and authorize President of the Board, Justin Ballard, to sign the required documents. That's my motion.
Second.
Came up with it all by myself.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Ballard will be signing is this the one? I don't think this is the document, but there we are. So I will then entertain a motion for us to go into executive session.
And do you want all of the grounds for executive session at this time, or are we still anticipating an executive session later?
All of them now.
We are exhausting these now.
Can we do a 5-minute break, possibly?
Yeah. 5
Yes.
minutes.
we will-
Okay.
We will also.
All right.
I move that we take a 5-minute break and then go into executive session pursuant to RSMO 610.021, subparagraph 1, legal actions, cause of action, or litigation involving a public governmental body and any confidential or privileged communications between a public governmental body or its representatives and its attorney. RSMO 610.021, subparagraph 3, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of particular employees by a public governmental body when personal information about the employee is discussed or recorded. RSMO 610.021, subparagraph 13, individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We will take.
Roll call.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Price.
Aye.
Ballard.
Aye.
Russ.
Aye.
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 We've approved the executive session. Good grief. For the visitors, that requires that it be private and confidential.
It's gonna be a good one.
Loves that mic.